Welcome, Muse Hackers, to the Hack Your Muse first ever episode podcast. Okay, I think that should be podcast episode. I see we're starting out with flaws already. So I'll just warn you, I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to start a conversation about hacking your muse, and about something I've developed that I call the creative engine. And I'm using it as a way to power up your muse so that you don't have to face the blank page with fear or trepidation ever again. Sound good? So today I want to introduce you to a concept that may save you a good deal of the heartache and struggle that I faced when you come to sit down to write what you want, when you want, and how you want. I wish that I had known about this when I first started writing 40 years ago. But that's one of those things that you can't know what you don't know until you actually sit down and think about it. So I've been thinking about the whole idea of hacking your muse and trying to figure out why you won't sit down to write when you know you want to, and what exactly is going on in your brain, how to change your thoughts so that your actions follow suit and you actually write your book without all the drama that sometimes goes into the process. I'm not normally a dramatic person. I have to warn you about that. If you like words, you'll like the word phlegmatic when you think about me. But people have often told me that I'm calm and relaxing, which I think is a good thing, although maybe I put them to sleep. I don't know. So I'm going to do a quick definition of what it means to me to write in full partnership with the muse. Other people call it the flow. I think for creatives, we actually should call it a muse flow, because where that inspiration is coming from that's channeling through our body is an amazing force. And I'm not always sure we know exactly where it is coming from. So I sit down, I put my fingers on the keyboard, sink down into the story. At some point, I surface, and there are pages and pages of story. The story basically runs like lightning in my veins, and I'm electrified during this process. I would say I've been able to do this writing with the muse about a quarter of my writing time. I've been writing for 40 years, so a quarter of my writing time is 10 years worth of writing time. But of course, sprinkled all throughout, not like solid time. When I'm wrestling with my muse, I'm struggling to get the words on the page. I'm not in flow. I may actually feel a certain amount of lightning in my veins, but it's just not getting out onto the page. I'm focused, and I don't let myself become distracted. I'm sure the words will come, even though I've given myself permission to write crappy words that may need to be revised heavily. So, I'm having to think about it. It's not with my muse where it's just pulling from the subconscious and coming together whole. It's actually a conscious process. When my muse is AWOL, which is one of my least favorite times to write, but I'm working from an outline I created with a powered up muse, the writing is very transactional. So-and-so needs to do this, and so-and-so needs to react this way. The words get done, they get written onto the page, but I know I'm going to need to come back and blow life in them later when my muse has decided to return to duty. Okay, story time for what I'm trying to save you from, or give you less time having to struggle. So picture me, I'm a young mom, I'm away from home. My husband he's a physicist, and he had a NASA summer internship. So our whole family went down to Huntsville, and we set up camp. And we really did set up camp. My office was a tray table and a folding chair. I had a deadline breathing down my neck. I kept exchanging emails with my editor. Yes, book is great. Yes, I'm going to make deadline. While internally, I was like, I can't find time to write. I'm never going to get these chapters written. I had 2 kids who needed to be entertained in a strange location. I'm not the kind of mom who just lets them run around on their own. So I needed to make sure that I knew what was going on with them at all times. I did have time to write, but even when I sat down in my lovely little folding chair, put my laptop on the tray table, I could not sit down. I would keep popping up to check on the kids, to look at the email, millions of different little things that would keep me getting up. I had my deadline to do, and I was desperate. So I did a hack that I don't actually recommend to anyone else, but worked for me. And I took the belt from my robe, tied it around myself and the chair, and didn't let myself get up from the chair. Now, I say didn't let myself get up from the chair. There were a few times when I got up to see what was going on with the boys, and my chair flapped along behind me because it was tied to me. It was one of our amusing stories from that trip. We had a good time. We did a lot of interesting things in Huntsville. But writing my book was not a fond memory then. My muse did not enjoy the lack of attention or the pressure of the deadline. This was back in the day when I had a traditional contract. And I had a real editor who expected me to turn the book in on time, no matter what. So I want to share with you a new process that I've been working on. I'm going to share my screen. I know this is a podcast, and I'm saying I'm going to share my screen. That's so exciting, isn't it? I'm going to share my screen. What does that mean? Well, that means that I'm going to put this up on YouTube because I do want to share what I'm doing with you. Yes, we get to listen to me do. This is supposed to be smooth, and it's not working out smoothly. All right, I'm going to see if I can edit this out. So there I was in Huntsville, tied to my chair, trying to get my book in on time, which I did. That was, I don't know, book 4, book 5 of a 7-book series, all of which were written to very short deadlines, because that's the way it worked. If you say yes, they tell you your deadlines and you meet them. I later learned about J.K. Rowling, and I admire her. Okay, so there I was in Huntsville, tied to my chair, trying to finish my book to deadline. I'm happy to say I made it. I used some other hacks. And I think that I can say I'm fully qualified to have started Hack Your Muse, because I may have tried everything possible to get words written to meet my writing goals and my writing deadlines. I know I wanted to try everything, or was desperate enough to try everything many times in my writing life. I began writing in high school for my high school newspaper. I was even co-editor. I learned about deadlines then because not only did I have to lay out the newspaper Back in the day, I had to physically, with a wax printer, cut it into pieces and lay out each page. I really enjoyed doing that, which sounds silly, but it's a whole new appreciation for layout and words and stories when you're doing it to the level of how can I fit these 2 lines onto this page so that everyone can read the end of the story. You think about, where do we break the story to continue it onto a new page? You begin to appreciate how editing a sentence can give you just enough room to fit another story here or there. So I think I can say with 100% certainty that I actually like writing, the whole process, and I like being a writer. So it has been a major puzzle in my life why, when I sit down to write, I can't always call my muse and snap into the flow. I'm well aware that most writers struggle with this. You're probably here because you struggle with it. I can't think of many writers that I know who don't struggle with it. I do know a couple, I will say that. So I know that it's a possibility. I want to be one of those writers, and I'm on my way to be one of those writers. And I credit it all to my work on mind management to change my self-sabotaging behaviors so that I can be an entrepreneur, not an authorpreneur. Writing is something that I do because I have to do it. There are other ventures that I also want to do that I don't have to do, that no one's actually waiting for me to do, but that I want to do and that I need to change myself to do. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but it's not about hack your muse. It's about the creative process. And so part of what I want to do on the bigger picture and the bigger scale is to change the conversation around writing. This has been happening in the writing sphere for a while now. We have self-publishing, which used to be a dirty word. And now it's a way for writers to reach readers and make money, tell the stories they want to tell. The process of hacking your muse that I'm going to talk about on this podcast ad nauseum is called by me, and I hope by you, if I change the conversation, muse management. Because it takes mind management into the realm of creativity and beyond, to quote Buzz Lightyear. I just saw the newest Toy Story movie. I loved it. I'm sorry. I'm such a kid at heart. We went to see it at a drive-in movie theater. That was cool. The first 5, so we went to a drive-in movie theater in a Tesla. The only thing more mind-blowing would probably have been to go in a DeLorean, but we didn't have a DeLorean, so we didn't. Okay, back to the concept. The first 5 podcasts of this series are critical to understanding the process that will free you from writer's block, in my belief. Today, we're going to talk about them in the broader perspective, and we're going to talk about something that I call the creative engine. So we're going to start with the muse, because when you're writing with the muse, everything seems easier. The muse is like magic. Yes, there is a cost to the magic, and you're often tired after a real powerful session with the muse, but the words that you write then feel so right and so authentic and honest about the story that it's like you've tapped that vein of lightning that's going through your body. Some people call this inspiration, but I don't think inspiration is a strong enough word. And in the process of my mind management journey, I think I have finally tapped into why I was always uncomfortable with calling writing with a muse inspiration. So if you don't know much about mind management, I'm going to suggest you look at Brooke Castillo at the Self-Coaching Podcast, or Tony Robbins. There are just so many people. You can pick your flavor of mind management expert. Tony Robbins and Brooke Castillo have 2 different approaches to the study. I prefer Brooks because her simple, clean model, that's what she calls it, the model, helped my lifetime of overthinking just settle itself down and become clear. And clarity for me is really critical in order for me to take action and have confidence in what I'm writing. The funny thing is I looked into mind management because I wanted to do something in the entrepreneurial space that required pulling together people, data people, book people, all sorts of do it people instead of me. As a writer, I've pretty much done everything myself when it comes to creating my worlds, thinking about my ideas, choosing my titles. Yes, I've had to fight with titles a few times with publishers, but I would say probably 80% of the time, even with a publisher, I definitely got to choose my title, and I do love titles. So I was happy about that. But as a writer, I direct everything on the page. I use words in my office, and I'm all by myself because writing in a crowd, while it can be interesting in a coffee shop or when you're doing a group sprint, is not usually what you do. But mind management actually allowed me to solve my number one writing procrastination problem, which is shared by 99% of the writers I've met. I used to think that sitting down to write and not being able to write was a part of the writing process, that you needed to wait for the answers to come to you. Mind management has a different approach. It counsels you to think your results into being. So it says when you're sitting there waiting, there's a thought blocking you. And if you try and figure out what that thought is and swap it out for a thought that's going to get you where you're going, you will write. So for example, let's think about how it would look. So you sit down to write and nothing's coming, and your normal process would be to say, oh, I'm blocked. This is horrible. I can't stand it. Your mind management process would be to say, I'm blocked. What am I thinking? And the tricky part of this is not what am I thinking? Because obviously you were thinking, I need to sit down and write, because you did. But what is your subconscious thinking? What thoughts are fueling your block that you don't actually realize are there? And so you think a little bit and you're like, well, do I like this book? No, I think this book is going in the wrong direction. Okay, well, that might be why you're blocked. Now, okay, good. You figured out why you're blocked. Mind management has an answer for that too, because just figuring out why you're blocked will not fix the block. You have to look at that thought and you have to say, okay, that thought is blocking me. What can I replace it with that's going to let me actually write? And so, for a simple thing, if you're saying to yourself, the book is going in the wrong direction, and it's, for me, whenever that happens, it's a whole body process. I just feel the book is wrong. I'm grumpy. I'm cranky. My neck hurts. Everything says there's something wrong. And yes, sometimes I can force myself through some scenes that I already know I'm going to be writing, but they don't feel right. And I'm wrestling. This is what I call wrestling with the muse. So what I started doing after I had the mind management was to really drill down. What is it I'm thinking? Okay, I'm thinking that I don't like the character. Why don't I like the character? What can I do to write now, even though I don't like the character? Because one of the things I'm not going to shift and suddenly think to myself, okay, I'll like the character for this writing session. That's not going to happen. But what I can do, because I have been writing for a very long time, and I know for certain that if I keep writing, I will figure out what the problem is. I might have to go back and rewrite 3 chapters, but I will know what what the problem is. I just always want to short circuit that. And I always want to write without having to do too much revision. That is a thought that gets in my way. And so what I can think in that session is it's okay to write my way to the solution. Relax, stop beating yourself up. The writing will show you the way. And when I think that, it changes my approach. I won't say it always calls the muse, although a really good way to call the muse and write with the muse is to simply write, and you write your way past the block, and before you know it, the muse is with you, very happy that you have not let the blocks get in the way. So that's a simple way to show you how mind management says to handle a block. It's not the normal process for writers. I think through the years, we've gotten a little bit proud of our difficulties. As writers, most people think what we do is pretty easy. We don't find it easy, but it's definitely not breaking rocks. It's definitely not doing anything that's going to make you sweat most of the time. So for some people, it does seem that we have it easy, being able to sit in an office, in the air conditioning, in our pajamas if we want to, and write books. So I think there's a resistance. I found for me that there was a resistance to using my thoughts to make the blocks go away. And it took me some time to actually think this was going to work. So I've used this process on myself for a little while, and I've really refined it in trying to bring it to the world, because what works for me doesn't take as much explanation as what it takes for me to work with other people. So I don't know what writing myths you believe. There are a lot, and most of them are false. Great writers have told stories in a weekend, Dickens and A Christmas Carol. Even now, 200 years later, it's a Christmas classic. I don't think he sat down to write a Christmas classic. I believe he sat down because he needed to pay some bills. He was really, really under the gun. There's a really great movie that I saw about that. It's like every writer everywhere would relate. He had somebody basically, back in the day, in the Victorian times, the bill collectors would come right to your house, and his wife was maybe not as careful with the budget as she wanted, and I'm not sure he actually always let her know that he didn't have any money. So he needed to write a book that would sell. And so he wrote A Christmas Carol. And the funny thing is, once he was done with it, he wrote it under the gun, under a lot of pressure. But once he was done with it, he was so proud of it that he insisted the publisher pay more for the printing of it. So because there was something in his bones that told him this was going to be a classic, which is funny, because that's one of the other things we do as writers, is we grump our way through the writing, and then all of a sudden we're like, this is really pretty good. It's a good feeling. So then on the other spectrum, you have J.K., I always call him J.K. Tolkien, sorry, J.R. Tolkien, who it took a lot longer writing the Lord of the Rings saga. And basically, he created an entire language for them to speak. Besides that, he had a day job as a university professor, and he had a mother that he was sole caretaker of. And yet, he didn't let that stop him. And The Lord of the Rings, again, another classic. So let's get back to the muse and what fuels her. Thoughts, good, bad, conscious and subconscious. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this podcast. Eventually, sooner or later, I will wear you down and you will say it a lot as well. In order to create with our muses, we rely on the creative engine running smoothly. So, all right. So if you are looking at the video, I'm switching the page so that you can see. I'm trying to switch the page. Oh, you don't need to see that one. I'm just trying to show the creative engine. By the way, you can get my Power Up Your Muse blueprint, which shows all of this and it visually, which is even better. You can just go to my website, kellymcclymerbooks.com/hack-your- okay, start again. You can go to my website to get a copy of the Power Up Your Muse engine for free. You can go to my website to get a copy of the Power Up Your Muse blueprint for free. It's kellymcclymerbooks.com/hack-damn it. You can go to my website to get a copy of the Power Up Your Muse blueprint if you want to look at it. Sometimes visually is better. It's at kellymcclymerbooks.com and it's power-up-your muse. That's pretty simple. Kelly McClymer Books, Power Up Your Muse blueprint. And I will put a link to it in the show notes in case spelling my name is tricky or anything, which it may very well be. So our creative engine runs on belief, which is made up of thoughts based in ego and motivation. For example, if we believe our engine hums in order to create with our muse, we rely on the creative engine to run smoothly. So what fuels the creative engine? Thoughts. Our creative engine runs on belief, which are thoughts that are based in ego and motivation, and action, which are thoughts based on clarity and purpose, and then into results, the actual written words that come with form and function. And then finally, the very last phase where the creative engine can break down is in reaction, where our thoughts are judgments and expectations. This is often a place where I break down. So I have a lot of experience with it. It turns out I'm awfully judgy. In doing some of my mind management work, I have been working on the concept of putting out B- work. The idea horrifies me, but then when I sat down and really thought about it, I realized I've never in my life given myself an A. And if you're never going to give yourself an A, you might as well just accept that B- work is where it's going to be until you can actually figure out what an A means. I mean, when you're trying to reach a bar and you keep lifting it, saying, nope, you're not there yet, it does not feel good. And I've been working on that quite a lot. And if you're like me, I'm going to say right now, stop it. Don't do that. It doesn't serve you. You think it does, but it doesn't. It leaves you always unhappy with the process because you never get to celebrate. You never get a moment to touch down and be happy with what you've done. And that makes everything worse. If I've learned anything in the last couple years, it would be that celebration and being proud of yourself, even if you never say it to anyone else, is a really important fleeting moment that you should celebrate and enjoy. It's a very simple process going from belief to action, to result, to reaction, back to belief. It's very circular. And when it's working well, it whirls like a tornado. You don't even realize you're doing it. If your muse is upon you and you are writing in the full muse state, there's nothing between you and this. This engine is going so fast, you don't even notice it. Can you feel the way it feels in your body when your creative engine is whirling and your muse has hold of you? Your story flows out of you as if it isn't you writing it. It is. It's your subconscious. You've tapped down into that dark and quiet and hidden place where so much is going on. Can you feel the way your body tenses when there's negative thought blocking your creative engine somewhere and every word is a struggle? You're either going to keep struggling and be mighty grumpy at the work, or you're going to give in to the urge to check out what's happening on Facebook or Instagram or garden or wash your dishes. So I'm here to tell you the really good news is that you can control it all with your thoughts. That's what hacks are. That's what writers have been doing for a very long time. But they've been using external hacks to kind of force a thought into a channel. And what I'm trying to get down into with Power Up Your Muse is having those thoughts come from inside. Start to substitute the blocking thoughts that abound in your subconscious with power thoughts that just keep you fueled without having to do so much wrestling with the muse. The really annoying news is that controlling your thoughts isn't easy. It takes time and effort. You're rooting out all those subconscious thoughts that have been planted by your parents, your teachers, the world around you, your experiences, all the things that have happened to you, been told to you, that you don't even actually believe, but that stop you. I can give you one example. I'm starting to go a little bit long, but I can give you one example here, which is there was a point in time when I was a grad student in fine arts. I think it was creative writing actually at the time. And I sold my first historical romances to a traditional publisher. Now, those two worlds, if you don't know it, don't actually coexist very well. They dislike each other. And I had a very odd experience where I would go in to my graduate writing courses and talk about poetry and language. And then I would go home and work through, wrestling with my muse a little bit in order to get the books written to entertain my readers, make them happy, make them feel the romance on the page. And it was very enlightening to me, but it also brought up all sorts of subconscious thoughts of like, you can't be a great writer if you're writing romance. You can't be a great writer if you're writing commercial fiction. Commercial fiction is going to prevent you from ever writing a great book. All of those thoughts. And they did not stop, and they've never stopped because they're there. They were planted there through years and years of creative writing courses through universities. And I'm okay with it. I recognize it now and I'm dealing with it. And I now have, a creative engine model to deal with it, which makes me happy because there are places where I can nuke those, but I can also honor the fact that I do have an ambition to write a great book. And I do have the ability, now that we do self-publishing, to be able to define that great book for myself and not need critics or editors or publishers to back it. And it's very freeing and very powerful to be able to do that, but it's also a lot more responsibility. So I'm struggling with the responsibility side of it now that I have so much more power to do what I want to do. But I'm good with that because I have my Muse management tool now. If you're lucky enough to know someone who doesn't have trouble calling the Muse, you can prove what I just said to yourself. Ask them what they think when they sit down to write. I'm going to have fun is the likely answer. I'm going to like what I wrote is the likely answer. I'm going to write something that I might need to fix, but I'll know how to fix. There are people who just have confidence. They trust themselves to be able to solve whatever problem they have. They're not looking outside them for the answer. They're looking inside them. What I've learned from doing the mind management for the big goals I have that are taking me way outside my comfort zones is that the more that you challenge yourself, the more likely that you're going to lose confidence. Think about it. Let's use math as an example. Everybody knows how to add. Most everybody handles the times tables okay. I sadly traumatized my poor father being very stubborn about it. We had one summer where we both shook our heads remembering it, where he thought I was never going to learn it, and I thought that I was really terrible at math. Then we get on to multiplication. Most people get that. Sometimes not as easy as other times. Then we get into algebra. Then we start getting into calculus. If you lose me, my sisters were great at calculus, still are. A lot of smart people in my family, they know calculus. I kind of admire them. And then there's math that's beyond calculus that I don't even have a name for. That is what we're talking about. If you're sitting down to write something and I'm not going to use the word formula because I don't like it, but if you're sitting down to write a story that's familiar to you, that you're comfortable with, that you know the ins and outs of a series like that, it's my cozy mystery series, and it's just the main character is a mom, like I used to be, where I was trying to fit in work around my children, around the family responsibilities, and always feeling a little bit behind. I know her. I know Molly really well, and she's easy to write in that sense. I still have to think up interesting little mysteries for her to solve and be funny and entertaining, but I'm not trying to solve or even elucidate a problem of the universe. I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun with what it's like to be a mom in this day and age. I have another series that's a lot tougher, and I'm not going to talk about it here because I'm already going long, but I will talk about it in the future. And you may relate. I've read a lot of books by a lot of writers, some published, some not. And I really admire writers who push the boundaries. I know it's not easy when you're playing outside the rules. I would say that Neil Gaiman comes to mind for a writer that people might be familiar with who does that. He's not the only one. Dr. Seuss, as a children's book writer, was so outside the pale, and yet he's a classic. So if you stick with me, you're going to end up in a place where you have more fun writing more often than not, but you're also going to have more desire to challenge yourself and get yourself into that uncomfortable stage where, yes, you will end up causing your own blocks to your creative engine, but you will have a tool to fix it. So the one question I'm going to leave you with here at the end of this podcast is, do you have a feeling, a thought that you shouldn't have fun writing? Did that thought or feeling take over your body and make you sit back and think thoughts like, if you have fun, you can't be a good writer. If you have fun, no one's going to pay you money. If you have fun, it can't be a job. If you had any of those thoughts, welcome to the club. Those are thoughts that you will fight. Wrestle with. Is wrestle with better than fight? I don't know. But anyway, I know those thoughts because I have them every day. Those are some of my most insidious blocks in every aspect of my life. It feels like I can never be playful and have fun until I have all the things that should be set up and ready to go, until they're all in order. And you know what I said in the beginning about never giving myself an A? And always when I'm just about to reach the bar, I raise it up a little higher and go, nope, not yet. Those are related. So if you're a person who is doing that to yourself, hang on and take this journey with me, because we're going to stop doing that. Because what I have learned is that's not productive. Something in our subconscious tells us that it is, but it's not. Because when you can touch that bar and go, yay, and then move it up, it feels a lot better and easier to do it. And that is what my version of Power Up Your Muse, and to deal with finding and getting rid of those creative blocks in the moment of the process, so that your creative engine can whirl and that you don't have the long stalled moments of waiting. Those thoughts are stubborn and deep in your subconscious. Over the course of this podcast, we're going to root them out and replace them. So you can write a great book. You can make money. You can have fun writing. Do you believe it? Can you feel the belief? Probably not. So you may need to use a hack like sprinting or tying yourself to a chair with your bathrobe until you get to the point where it's a deeply ingrained subconscious belief. The mind management people have shown it's possible to do this. It's no easier than writing, no matter what it looks like from the outside, or no matter how simple it sounds. For example, here's a simple hack. Tell yourself when you sit down, I have permission to have fun for this one writing session. It's a small thought, but it's much easier to believe that than it is to believe that writing as a career and a process should be fun. Because we have so much in the literature, all the movies, all the books, all the stories of real life writers struggling to actually think that writing should be or could be fun. So try that little simple, I have permission to have fun for this one writing session. See what happens. So I'm going to talk a little more about belief and where that breaks down in the next podcast. And we're going to dig really deep into where your thoughts may be blocking you there and what thoughts you can replace them with so you can move into action. Because when you don't have belief, you are more likely to simply never start. You'll just think about your book, or you will start and then you will run through 3 chapters, 3 beautiful chapters, and stop and start 3 more beautiful chapters, or the beginning of a short story. And How do I know this? I'm going to remind you, I've been writing a long time. I know when I talk about a story, when I talk, say, something like, you're going to write 3 chapters and stop, and then write 3 more on a new story, there are 5 or 6 writers I know who spring to mind. I'm not telling you anything theoretical, telling you things that I've seen happen. At the time, they puzzled me, and I put them in the back of my mind, maybe deep in my subconscious, to try and figure out why we do those things. But this is the season to power up your muse. And I feel like all of that subconscious work has come to fruition this summer with Power Up Your Muse. So I'm really excited about that. And I want you to remember this. Until you have your mind fully managed, you may need to hack your muse. You may need to try a quick trick to calm the subconscious doubts and fears. Give yourself permission to get the words on the page any way you can. But remind yourself that one day it's going to be fun, even when you reach the point that you're challenging yourself to go faster, deeper, or to take an entirely new path. By the way, as a reminder, if you'd like my free Power Up Your Muse blueprint, head over to kellyMcClymer.com/power-up-your-muse-blueprint. The link is in the show notes. And I am excited to start this discussion. I can't wait to see where we will be in a year.